Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to speak about the last part of the human evolution. We are going to talk about the origins and behavior of the Homo sapiens. So, for much of the last century, the conventional wisdom about the origin of modern humans was that the transformation from archaic Homo population to modern humans took place more or less independently in each of the main regions of the world, that is, in Africa, Europe, Asia, and Indonesia. This is the so-called multiregional hypothesis. So, for example, in Europe, the Neanderthals would have evolved into European modern humans, and in Asia, the late surviving Homo erectus would have evolved into Asian modern humans. In its extreme form, this multiregional hypothesis embraced the now thankfully discredited notion that geographical variants of modern humans were separate species with distinctly different evolutionary histories. A weaker form of the multiregional hypothesis combined the hypothesis that regional variants of archaic Homo had each evolved into modern humans, with the proposal that subsequent to their independent evolution, the difference between these regional variants were eventually reduced by gene flow. They support this weaker form of the multiregional hypothesis because they see morphological evidence of continuity between pre-modern Homo and modern human populations in each of the major regions of the world. For example, they claim dental and cranial evidence link Homo erectus and modern Australians, and that a distinctive facial morphology links the Neanderthals and modern Europeans. Eurocentrism in paleoanthropology. During a period of time, evidence suggested to many researchers that continental Europe was not only the birthplace of modern civilization, but also of our own species, Homo sapiens. One of these evidence was the first discovery of a fossil modern human, the recovery of the skeleton of the Red Lady, from a cave at Paviland, Britain in 1823, by about 33 million years ago. However, the discovery that is nearly always cited as the first fossil evidence of modern in Europe was made in 1868 at the Cro-Magnon rock shelter, France, by about 30 million years ago. A challenge to Eurocentrism. This preconception was challenged by two developments. The first one began in the later part of the 19th century with the discovery of fossil evidence of human ancestors that were more primitive than Neanderthals in Asia. The second one was the realization that the early phase of hominin evolution most likely occurred in Africa. Besides that, in the 1980s, 3 lines of evidence pointed out that Africa may have been the birthplace of modern humans and of modern human behavior. The first evidence was the redating of the collection of hominin fossils in the Levant. This made clear that the modern human-looking fossils from Quasset and Skull that belonged to an archaic Homo species were older than the Neanderthals fossils from Kebar and Amut. This meant that researchers could not use dating evidence to make the case that Neanderthals evolved into modern humans. The second was the discovery of modern human-looking fossils in southern Africa and Ethiopia. The most influential discovery was made in 1968 in Ethiopia. Here researchers had uncovered a modern human-looking cranium, the Homo cranium, that had been dated 295 million years ago, representing so the oldest known Homo sapiens. The third line of evidence came from the application of molecular biological methods to the study of modern human variation. The pioneering study applying these methods was published in 1987 by Rebecca Kahn and her colleagues. It focused on mitochondrial DNA because mutations occur in mitochondrial DNA at a faster rate than they do in nuclear DNA. And unlike nuclear DNA, in mitochondrial DNA does not occur recombinant events when germ cells divide, nor does it have all the innate mechanisms for DNA repair that are found in the nucleus. This may contribute to its higher mutation rate and account for the observation that once mutations occur in mitochondrial DNA, they tend to persist. The Kahn study compared mitochondrial DNA from 147 modern humans, 46 from Europe, North Africa, and the Near East, 20 from Sub-Saharan Africa, 34 from Asia, 26 from New Guinea, and 21 from Australia. The researchers found 133 different versions of mitochondrial DNA. They arranged them in the shortest tree that connect all the variants while minimizing the number of mutations. The tree had a deep African branch and a second branch that contained the mitochondrial DNA variants found in people from outside sub-Saharan Africa. There was more variation within the sub-Saharan African branch of the tree than in the rest of the world put together. Not only that, most of the mitochondrial DNA variants seems to have had an African origin. Mitochondrial Eve. Taking this into account, Kahn and her colleagues make another assumption. They claim that the distribution of the mitochondrial DNA variants suggested that when modern humans left Africa, they did not interbreed with any of their archaic populations they must have encountered as they moved into the other main regions of the Old World. They claim that only African archaic Homo populations contributed to the gene pool of modern humans. Thereby, a second hypothesis for humankind emerging arises. Because you inherit the vast majority of your mitochondrial DNA from your mother, the evolutionary history of mitochondrial DNA is effectively a history of maternal inheritance. One of its implications is that the mother of all humanity was a 200 million years old African female. So the press and some researchers refer to it as the mitochondrial Eve hypothesis. Another way to refer to it is as the strong reason out of Africa hypothesis. Nowadays, most researchers who support a raising out of Africa model for modern human origins support a less extreme version, the weak reason out of Africa hypothesis. These hypotheses include gene flow between regions. This still pointed to Africa as the origin of a substantial amount of modern human mitochondrial variation, but several of recent studies suggested there was evidence that pre-modern Homo from outside Africa also contributed to the modern human mitochondrial genome. Modern humans beyond Africa. There are two discussions about the arrival of modern humans anywhere beyond Africa. One is the arrival of modern human-looking people themselves, and the other discussion concerns the arrival of modern human behaviour. Europe. The earliest fossil evidence of modern humans in Europe comes from a site in southeast Europe in Romania, which is dated to around 35 million years ago. The earliest evidence of modern human behaviour in Europe currently comes from sites in Bulgaria, dated to between 43 and 40 million years ago. Modern humans in Europe overlap with the Neanderthals for around 10 million years, more or less, depending on the location. Asia. Researchers have suggested that modern humans may have occupied one or more parts of Seoul, the landmass that includes Papua New Guinea, Australia and Tasmania, by 40 million years ago. With so much water locked up in polar ice caps and glaciers, land that is part of the continental shelf and which is now submerged would have provided dry connections between landmasses that are today separated by water. If homins were in Seoul by 40 million years ago, then they must have been in Sunda, the landmass that includes mainland Southeast Asia and the present-day islands that make up Indonesia, sometimes before that. These early modern humans in Sunda must have been able to travel on rafts or some other form of craft, and to have managed well enough to spend at least several days at sea in order to cross the open water between Sunda and Seoul. The existing homin fossils recorded suggest that modern humans were the only hominins to enter the region we call Seoul, so there is no question of overlap with earlier groups. The time of the initial arrival of modern humans in Australia is unknown. Fossil evidence indicates that they might have arrived by 50 million years ago. New World, America. There were three routes from the Old World to the New: across the Bering Straits, island hopping from one Aleutian island to another, or across the Atlantic. Today, all three require a sea voyage, but for several periods during the past 40 million years, the fall in sea levels and the thick ice caused by the intense cold conditions would have closed the Bering Straits and linked some of the Aleutian islands. The problem in all three cases was the intense cold those making the journey would have experienced. The conventional wisdom is that the immigrants made their way south along a relative ice-free corridor in Alaska and Western Canada, and then went on to populate all North, Central and South America relatively rapidly. The best known archaeological evidence for modern humans in the New World is the Clovis culture, characterized by distinct stone tools called Clovis points. The oldest Clovis sites are dated to slightly before 11 million years ago. More recently, researchers have claimed they have unearthed evidence of a stone industry that is more primitive than the Clovis, the pre-Clovis sites. It is likely there were several migrant streams of modern humans into the New World. Different groups over different periods arrive and settle, and each made their own contribution to the genetic and cultural diversity of New World populations. Thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon.